Turner, da Universidade de Queensland, em Brisbane, Austrália. Ela é uma das coautoras do programa Parentalidade Positiva e vai falar também da experiência na implementação desse programa e mais questões da ciência da implementação. Eu pedi para ela fazer uma auto-apresentação breve também.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm just looking for text messages to let me know that the sound is coming through. Thank you for having me. It's very late in the evening here in Australia, but I'm calling in just to share with you our experience of both developing and then disseminating the Triple P Positive Parenting Program, which has developed out of our work at the University of Queensland in Australia. Our vision has always been to create a community where parents have the knowledge and skills and confidence to raise their children in a safe and loving and low conflict world. In communities where parenting or positive parenting becomes socially normative and adverse childhood experiences are minimised, and we have a population-based approach to supporting parents, then the obvious benefits are for the children, for parents, for families, and for the entire community. I mentioned briefly adverse childhood experiences, and I'm not sure whether you use these categories in your work, but there are a number of traumatic childhood experiences, including abuse and neglect and various forms of household dysfunction, which have a dramatic impact through their toxic stress on both health, mental health, long-term outcomes. And so this is something that if we can start to tackle what's going on in the family environment early on, we can start to avert some of those cases of health and mental health issues. So we know that relationships do matter when children have a positive, nurturing family environment. It's an important foundation for secure bonding with family, better emotional and behavioural self-regulation, which leads to personal and social well-being and academic success. So all good long-term life course outcomes. On the flip side, if there's dysfunctional family relationships and that stress that I mentioned in terms of adverse childhood experiences, these lead to poorer self-regulation, a risk of social and emotional behavioural problems, and antisocial, more extreme behaviour later on in life, and obviously the consequent poorer life outcomes. So for us, in our work, we really see good parenting as the clean water of mental health and well-being, something that everyone should have access to, and in some places supports need to be provided to ensure that that happens. So what I would like to do is take you through our journey with Triple P from program development, developing an evidence base for the program, then designing dissemination mechanisms that could then go to scale. So firstly, what is Triple P? It's a parenting and family support strategy that aims to increase parents' knowledge and skills and confidence in raising their children. We target this by helping parents be positive and proactive in their daily interactions with children, increasing their skills in managing the common social and emotional and behavioural problems and developmental issues that parents face, reducing family conflict and coercive or punitive methods of discipline, improving communication about parenting issues between parents and other carers, like school and childcare settings, and reducing levels of stress and anxiety and depression, and particularly conflict over parenting issues with partner. Triple P has a number of theoretical foundations, primarily social learning theory and research on child development and developmental psychopathology, but also draws from behaviour analysis and cognitive behaviour therapy principles, and more recently moving into public health principles as we've gone to a much more broader population approach to family support. So Triple P itself is not an individual single program, it's now become a system of programs. There are 5 levels of intervention, ranging from at the bottom of that triangle, you'll see level 1, which is a media and communication strategy. That's aiming for the broadest reach possible at the lowest level of intensity possible, so minimum cost to reach the broadest number of people, just to really get across positive parenting messages, valuing parents, and normalising the idea of getting support for parenting. So then the next levels going up are gradually increasing intensity of intervention. So brief parenting advice at level 2 might be a 1 or 2 hour seminar. Level 3, narrow focus parenting skills training, typically revolves around a specific problem, and it may be with a child health nurse or a doctor or a school teacher about one specific issue. So managing tantrums or dealing with sleep problems. Level 4 is a more intensive program that covers all of our core positive parenting skills that we discuss with parents. So there are about 17 strategies that we would cover in that level of intervention, and then really tailor how families might use those strategies. And the top level, level 5, is what we would call enhanced Triple P. That's for families with much more complex needs. So it may be adding in mood management strategies or partner support strategies, anger management. So for families who have a number of other factors that need to be addressed to help them calmly deal then with day-to-day parenting challenges. So we work on 5 core principles of positive parenting. They are a safe and engaging environment where we know children can play in a safe way, they're supervised, but there's also plenty of interesting things for them to do and engage with. We also want to create a positive learning environment that's responsive so that parents are available and react and encourage children to help promote their development. There's lots of opportunities for stimulation so that children can reach their potential. We also aim for developing consistent and assertive discipline. So to help children learn limits and rules, to have those boundaries set, and that parents can deal with any difficult behaviour in a calm and consistent way. We're also looking at reasonable expectations, both the expectations that parents have of their children, whether they're developmentally appropriate, whether they are appropriate for that particular child, their individual skill levels, but also parents' expectations of themselves. So many parents want to be perfect, and that's setting themselves up for anxiety and stress that's not necessary. So we try to make sure we have realistic expectations about the kinds of goals and targets that people set. And the last principle is taking care of yourself as a parent. As you know, parents, it's much easier to be consistent and calm and patient with children if parents have actually looked after their own needs as well. So they're having time off to do things that are their own interests, to have time with adult company, so that they're not being a martyr to always being available to children. We're actually trying to get that work-life, family balance happening. So very quickly, just to run through some of the things about Triple P that may be interesting for you. One is flexibility. So we really focus on self-regulation rather than teaching a set content. We really try and help parents to take from a program what they need. We have a multi-level, as you saw the pyramid. The aim of that is the minimum amount of help that parents need. So we're not over-servicing, we're not doing intensive interventions with everybody. We're really trying to do a very brief intervention option as a starting point, and if that's enough, great. If not, then we can refer to higher levels of support. We also have a number of, over the years, we've developed a number of delivery modalities so that it may be individual programs in a clinic or home visiting or over the telephone. We have group programs, as I mentioned, big group seminar or small discussion groups, or a larger parenting group that might meet over several weeks. And also self-directed options, so something like a book, a workbook, or an online program that has interactive modules that parents can work through in their own time. The aim of having all those different delivery modalities is to give parents options about how they engage with parenting support according to their preferences, but also according to their availability, so that they may not be able to access the service during the day. They can work through a program at home online. So we're just really trying to have that flexibility for parents. I mentioned it's a multidisciplinary approach in that initially we developed in a clinical psychology setting, but that only reaches a small number of families, at least here in Australia. So we needed to look at working in the health system with child health nurses and with family doctors, in the education system, in the childcare sector, in family services and child protection. So we have really tried to engage with a number of different disciplines to make sure that at any point where parents are looking for support, they can access something that is consistent and has an evidence base. We also really focus on generalising parenting skills. So again, that idea of minimal sufficiency. If we start with targeting a particular problem or a parenting plan, and then really prompt parents to try and generalise that to other issues, to other children, and over time, so that they don't need to keep coming back for support, they're actually developing those skills themselves. We also have a blend of that level 1 universal access for everybody as a prevention approach, and then more targeted intervention if needed. And more recently, we've really started to look at public health principles and having a population approach with that kind of universal brief intervention and access to that multi-level system, so that we have the greatest reach in the population to try and shift prevalence rates of child behaviour issues, child maltreatment. So if we're looking at really trying to improve outcomes for families, we really work with parents to decide which areas they would like to focus on, which skills they would like to develop in their children and themselves, and really also look at what are the difficult times or the high-risk times for the family, so that we can build up the skills that are needed and deal with any particular difficulties that of traps that the parents might fall into. I've mentioned the different delivery options, which just gives people the ability to really look at what they're capable of committing to at any given time, but also trying to match the level of intensity of an intervention to the severity of the concerns that parents have. The self-regulation framework really does try to empower parents to develop their skills and to take control of what they're learning in the intervention, and obviously then the outcomes as well. I'll talk a little bit more about self-regulation. We really break that down into a number of key constructs. The first is self-sufficiency. So parents are developing the knowledge and skills to become independent in tackling what comes in the future. Self-efficacy, in that they believe they can actually deal with parenting challenges and situations effectively. Self-management, so they choose the issues to work on, they set their own goals, they choose the parenting strategies that resonate for them based from a toolkit. So they're developing a plan for themselves, and also track and monitor how they're going and evaluate their own successes. So it's very much a hands-off role for practitioners to provide some of the knowledge and the skills and skill development, but then let parents run with it. So they really are becoming independent. And by doing that, then the idea of personal agency is that parents can attribute any positive changes to what they're doing and to what their child is doing, rather than to what a practitioner has taught them to do or something else is happening in the environment. And lastly, problem solving. So parents are applying the skills they learn to issues that go way beyond the initial presenting concern. Now, these are all strategies that parents indirectly are also teaching their children, and they're also strategies that we aim to develop in practitioners. So there are multi-level aims in terms of self-regulation and self-management. So, in building a collaborative therapeutic relationship, the focus of developing self-regulation can really evolve over time. So we're setting up a very supportive context with parents where they are encouraged to be optimistic about being able to make changes, and we're, as I mentioned, letting go of that guided model, that teaching model that we're an expert and we have to convey our knowledge. It's actually more guiding that if we give an example and then prompt parents and gradually step back and give less and less support so that they are mastering skills on their own. I want to touch very briefly just on the bigger picture for parenting. We're really, if we're aware of trying to enhance and harness enablers and minimise barriers to program completion and program success, we do need to look at the larger ecological context. Now, this is a big image, and I think the main thing to convey is that in the purple area there are so many things going on in the community, and it's the context that parents are parenting in. We can't change all of those things, but at the closer level, in terms of what might impact on somebody participating in a program or seeing a program through to the end or getting the best results from a program, there are a number of things that we can target. And so I'll talk briefly about the program, the social influences, parents' cognitions or affect, and motivation to complete. So we can do things that make a program fit better. I think Lauren talked about practitioners balancing the benefit or the effort or cost in taking on a new program. By having the flexibility in how a program is implemented or designed, I think Triple P gives us that ability to tailor to exactly what a family needs. So they may have a preferred delivery format. We can use relevant examples. We really try and work in a culturally sensitive and safe way. And to increase reach, always trying to ensure that the programs are at the lowest cost, if not no cost, to families, so that we're not preventing anybody from having access. And we're really building that reach across the entire community. In terms of social support, we really try and engage both parents, if there are two parents, or extended family members, involving friends and neighbours. One of the things that is a predictor of a family coming into an intervention is that they know somebody, a friend or a family member who has done the program, or they're hearing about it from different people. So it has that sort of approval of the community. And obviously also looking at convenient times and locations. Most of the programs that we run are not home visiting. That's a very costly thing to do in Australia. So we look at trying to be in the locations that parents are at. So it may be in a library or a school or a health centre, as well as enhancing things like telephone if we do need to contact people at home. In terms of the cognitive and affective factors, really trying to look at inspiring parents to think about what would be the benefits if they did something. So that sort of motivational piece that we'll talk about in a second. But using peer models, using retraining attribution, so we're not targeting and blaming parents or blaming children, but trying to think of more realistic and more helpful ways of interpreting a situation. And trying to look at how confident parents are. So rather than setting homework tasks that then we don't know if people will go away and do, checking if they're confident they can do it. Do they know what the task is? And then coming back and reviewing it. So any effort that parents put in is always recognised and built on. And in terms of motivation, the idea of a testimonial or talking to somebody else who's done the program can help people see the fit and see how it might benefit themselves. We look at competing demands. What else is going on that the family need help with or that might prevent them from coming along? And then developing a troubleshooting approach that if there's something that will get in the way, how can we deal with that before it actually happens? So after developing the program, and obviously now there are a number of different programs that fit under the Triple P umbrella, but with any new program that's developed, the next step is to look at, does it work, and develop an evidence base that makes us confident to then disseminate it to the community. So getting it out of the research setting. And if we're thinking about effectiveness of programs, it's a big question. What intervention, delivered by whom, in what context, via which delivery modality, is effective with what kind of parent, child or youth problems, at what age, in what family, cultural and community context, and how does the intervention effect come about? So it's a big question. And there are a number of studies that have been going on in the field of family intervention and directly related to Triple P. I've got a list of just types of trials, from single case studies, randomised controlled trials, place-based or effectiveness evaluations, cross-cultural studies. There's so many different ways that we can look at what programs are effective, for whom, what do we need to do to tailor it to different populations. So any evidence base is important, but it takes time to develop. And I'll just show you, this is pretty much the 40-year history of Triple P. It began with Professor Sanders' PhD back in the late 70s, and it's really developed over time. Once we developed a name and started to disseminate out of a research context and into the community, which I'll talk more about, then the program has just exponentially been researched by other researchers across the world, but it's also led to rollouts in different countries. So there have been a number of trials with different issues for children, from conduct problems through to habit disorders, severe feeding problems, pain and anxiety, to bullying and for children at risk of abuse. And then lifestyle issues like managing obesity and children with developmental disabilities, autism. So there's a number of different targets that have been the focus of Triple P studies, and also a number of different family types, from traditional nuclear families, single parents, separating families, step families, and so on. So I think the main point here is that any given intervention can have multiple uses if it's worked with flexibly and is really targeted and tailored to the needs of any given family at any one time. So in brief, typical outcomes for Triple P trials include increased parents' confidence, parenting skills, so reducing that coercive and negative parenting or lax, ineffective parenting, reductions in child maltreatment, and reunification of families who have had children out of home, in out-of-home placements, and then obviously improved child behaviour and emotional adjustment. So that's a meta-analysis, but there are many studies since then as well. But these are sort of the core findings because they're the core issues that we're targeting in terms of shifting parenting style and helping children develop self-regulation and their general well-being.
Só para todo mundo entender, lá são 12 horas a mais, são 11h15 da noite. Para a gente agradecer a participação dela, que ela está fazendo a conferência já de noite. Não,
I'm getting a message that the video isn't working, which is a shame because I can see it
enquanto
here.
ela tenta colocar
Anyway.
o vídeo, mas não, a tradução não. Ela não consegue nem ver a gente, na verdade, ela só escuta, mas não simultaneamente.
Shall I try again? I'll give it one more try. It might just be too hard to scroll.
Melhor pular o vídeo, né? Vamos continuar.
I'm gathering that's not coming through very well. Anyway, I'll move on. Basically, that mum was saying she was getting quite depressed and very tired, and her child was aggressive, and it really took her being able to step back and look at what was going on in the way they interacted with each other, for her to realise that she was being negative all the time, and by flipping it around to be positive, she could start to see a big change in his behaviour, and she was actually starting to enjoy being a parent. With large-scale population trials, there are often other results or focuses in terms of the data that are looked at. So that in a large trial in the States, it was for counties that had Triple P system, there were fewer out-of-home placements and cases of child maltreatment, including injuries. In Ireland, the focus was more, again, in a couple of matched counties, one receiving Triple P. The focus was more around development, so improved cognitive functioning and language development, social skills, motor development. So they're not things that are necessarily targets of the intervention, but by giving parents more information about nurturing environments and promoting children's development, if we can tap into those large data sets, we can often find that we're getting an effect on a population level rather than just on an individual family level. And in terms of long-term effects, a couple of independent studies have found, one with a 10-year follow-up that had really good retention of families who had attended a group program. 10 years later had significantly lower internalising problems and externalising problems and improved parenting practices. So 10 years out is a pretty good indicator that the things that are changing short term can maintain over time for families. Another was in Western Australia. The first one was in Germany. The second was in Western Australia, looking at outcomes spilling over into academic achievement and school attendance, as well as risky behaviour or potentially maltreatment as well with that emergency room visit. So the message is, if we can intervene early and prevent severe child behaviour problems or children getting into the child protection system and being removed from families, it's a huge cost saving for the community. These are a couple of different analyses that say the Washington Institute of Public Policy looks at cost to the community for implementing a program and then the benefit in terms of preventing costs in juvenile justice and hospitalisations and people not being employed. So the cost-benefit analysis there is about an $8 return for every dollar spent on a very early parenting intervention. So I think it's often hard politically to argue for prevention programs because you don't necessarily see an immediate change. But if you can look at that kind of analysis, then there is actually a huge economic benefit on top of the social benefit of providing parenting support. So, back to the journey. Having developed a program, really developing an evidence base, so we're confident that it is effective, then how do we bring that to the community? We need to have mechanisms to go to a broader scale, and that's where we've probably spent a significant amount of our time with Triple P. For us, the arrangements are, the program is owned by our university, and we do the program development and early evaluation at the university. So we develop practitioner materials, teaching aids, the parent resources like tip sheets and workbooks and videos, and then professional training curriculum and materials. And then the university has licensed a training and publishing company, Triple P International, to disseminate the program worldwide. So that includes publishing the books, training practitioners, and then implementation support, which overlaps with what Lauren was talking about before. The idea of not just training and hoping for the best, but there is that backup support after training. And then there's a royalty stream that comes back to continue program and development and research at the university. So when we have a program that we believe is ready to disseminate, because there is evidence of its effectiveness, so we have at least one published trial, we have manuals developed for delivery. Each manual has session guides and then fidelity checklists, so individual practitioners can check off as they go through a program that they're covering all of the core content. And once we have a training course developed for a particular program at each level or each variant, then it is handed over to TPI, who have accredited trainers that travel around the world to deliver the training program. So they're usually in 2 to 3 day training workshops. They include some presentation live modelling, video modelling, and then group activities and active skills training, so there's lots of role playing, rehearsal and feedback. That core information then is built on for accreditation. So there's generally a pre-accreditation workshop where people get to practice their skills again and to really refresh how they use the program. And then accreditation, which is generally a month or so after training, which is a test of their content knowledge, but also skills demonstration. So there are a number of scenarios that they act out to ensure they have the required level of skill. All of the, typically, I haven't mentioned evaluation, but through every program, we always do at least a pre and post assessment for outcomes for families. Similarly with training, we do a pre and post assessment of practitioners' confidence in their skills to deliver programs with families. And so the training typically increases practitioner self-efficacy, both in terms of content knowledge, but also process. So they're feeling more confident in being able to have consultations with parents. And then, as I said, there's an implementation consultant that can support organisations who have taken on the training to really embed it into their service delivery. So the message is, even though the programs are manualised and the training is manualised, we really try and encourage practitioners to look at responsive delivery so that they can be flexible, as long as they are also very conscious of fidelity to the core program content. So there are certain variations in content that are low risk and high risk. High risk would be completely leaving out some core content. Low risk might be giving different examples or telling stories rather than using a PowerPoint step-by-step sort of instruction. Variations in process, again, low and high risk. Low risk might be taking longer or shorter time to cover content. High risk would be perhaps doing things out of order. And so what we would be typically focusing on developing skills and positive relationships and encouraging good behaviour first, and then dealing with some discipline strategies. If you were to swap that and just go straight to discipline first without any of the positive relationship building to start with, it's not going to work. So it would be high risk to completely mess around with delivery when we have so many trials to show that particular delivery process is effective. So lastly, going to scale, and this really now is where Lauren was focusing before, the implementation in the real world. Once we have all of the program developed, the training developed, we know how to pass it on through a training company. How do we really make sure then, going to scale, the program is going to be effective and also sustained over time? So even evidence-based programs aren't necessarily going to work if they're not implemented well, and so we have to be very cognizant of the environment where the program is to be delivered, and the capacity, as Lauren said before, the skills of the practitioners. So we really need to support organisations to make sure we do have the best program reach and fidelity and sustainability over time. And that strong implementation planning can really reduce cost or waste by training people who are then not supported, and like the image that Lauren showed, that only a very small fraction, just with training alone, actually go on to implement over time. So that implementation planning includes things like who should be trained in an organisation, who's got the capacity and the interest, what are the implementation targets, so being clear about how many sessions or how many programs or how many families might be run through a program. And then how to integrate with existing workloads. Again, that sort of cost-benefit analysis at a practitioner level. If I'm already doing program A and you're telling me I have to do program B, how do they fit together, or do I have to give up one up or what is the expectation about the sort of support that will be given for a new program. And that can be just logistics around recruiting families or filling in client files or collecting data, scoring data. So all of that sort of support is going to enhance the chance that a practitioner will take the program away from training and actually start to implement if they have that scaffolding around them. Also things like planning to repeat training to cover staff attrition, planning to really look after resourcing practitioners longer term. And as Laura mentioned before, practitioner support is the key thing, and that's come out of a couple of studies that we have done together that we know, particularly in remote communities or disadvantaged communities, having coaching and mentoring to get people up and running with the program and confident, and then ongoing supervision and peer support, so that self-evaluation is ongoing about how am I delivering the program, what could I do better, and that's supported through a supervisor or a peer, just prompting those regular supervision sessions and reviews. And we also look at ongoing partnership really in terms of technical assistance, so that there's a feedback loop back to the training company and back to the university as a developer of a program, so that the actual core program resources are responsive to that feedback. We do new additions of things based on feedback from the field and updates in research. But it's also just that partnership that an organisation is supported in delivering. I think Lauren mentioned drivers of implementation success as well, so I'll just touch on this briefly. But creating strong local partnerships and champions, so if someone's really supportive of a program and will really try to get it embedded in a service, it's more likely to succeed. That implementation planning sort of includes getting support from line managers and supervisors, making sure that those funding ideas are discussed early on about if a program is to be started, it needs to then be supported to sustain over time. We've talked about training and supervision, achievable targets, but also making sure there are some targets, so it's not just an expectation that you can go to training and that's it. You're not required to deliver a program. For the cost going into training and the time involved, we really try and set a contract that practitioners will commit to delivering a certain number of seminars or seeing a certain number of families per year. So they have a target to work towards. And then having access to technical and consultation support we've talked about, and then just the routine evaluation of outcomes. And I mentioned that's the scientist practitioner approach is really embedded in Triple P, so that we're always evaluating that what we do has an impact. And the reason for that is it's important for parents to see where they're at and to see what's changing through a program and whether it's met their needs. It helps practitioners plan and tailor the programs that they're delivering. It's also important to be able to check at the end of an intervention, have we actually done what the family needed, or do we need to go to a more intensive intervention or refer to another service for other support. The other thing this sort of routine data collection does is it helps practitioners and services work out how they're going compared to what's sort of expected of the impact of a program. And it really can help with building a case for ongoing funding for services. We've had a number of, Laura and I have worked with Indigenous organisations in Australia who are not used to collecting data and find it really uncomfortable. But once they're needing to argue their case for continued funding for the service, having graphs of outcomes of families before and after programs has been really helpful for them to prove the impact of the programs that they're running. So, with all of that happening, just very quickly an overview, Triple P International has now delivered training in 27 countries. So it just really shows that with sensitive delivery of programs and also of training, programs can cross culture and cross language barriers. It's really, I think the core content is fairly universal. And what we change then obviously is translation and maybe examples. But because parents are setting their own goals and taking from the program what they find most useful, that means that it really is flexible across cultures. Now I have another DVD, I'll see if this goes. Okay, I'm getting a message that it's not working. I've got a couple of others. I'll give it a go. But that one I think was just lovely footage for us to see that in such a different environment like the slums in Nairobi, parents are engaging with the program and taking out of it something that's useful for them. For the testimonials at the end of that clip, the main messages were, traditionally there's a lot of corporal punishment, there's a lot of smacking to the point of being life-threatening, and so for parents to see that there's a different way was really quite shocking for them, and that was so positive that there were alternatives, that you don't just have to smack a child or to hit a child to teach them a limit. You can actually use other strategies. So that was what was in that clip. I was just briefly going to talk through the Queensland rollout in our own state. The government has just recently taken on Triple P as a statewide rollout to try and reach families all across Queensland. The aim is to reach families, diverse families, city, urban, remote, rural. So already in the first 2 years of the rollout, 135,000 parents have had some contact with Triple P. A lot of those were online. I think there were about 30 or 40,000 online, but the rest are face-to-face services. The way that rollout is happening is that the government is paying for training for practitioners who are in existing services. So it's not new staff or new positions, it's just skilling up people who are already in health, education, family services, charities, NGOs, to take on Triple P. The funding is also providing resources for parents free of charge. And so it's just harnessing a workforce that is there, but giving them this evidence-based system or a couple of the program variants to use in normal service delivery. So the aim is, by doing that, it will be sustainable beyond the government funding, because those positions are already funded. They're just learning to work in different ways with their clients. One of the crucial things in doing that is just normalising participation in parenting programs. So Triple P International have been really clever at engaging advertising and media people to look at communications campaigns to create community awareness. There's also just harnessing the peer-to-peer testimonials, which aren't working for me in my video clip. And also getting people like famous footballers or somebody who is well respected in the community to advocate for the program, or at least for seeking support. I've just got a couple of photographs. So these are the sorts of things that TPI have done around the world. So billboards and signs on bus shelters, newspapers and flyers, websites for various programs, television, radio. I love the bus wrap. That's actually in America, and it's a mobile clinic. So it's completely covered in Triple P logos, and it drives around to remote areas in the country. And kids know, and families come to sessions in the bus, which is just, I think it's a fabulous idea. I've got another clip. I'll give it a go, but it may not work. Yeah. Okay. I don't know how to buffer or to get it working ahead, but anyway, that was an African American mum with a child with Down syndrome, and she just talks about how it's okay to look for help, and it's actually a positive thing. So that sort of testimonial is what Triple P has used on websites, so that we can, if a parent is looking around for some support or some information and they see somebody who they resonate with who looks like them or has similar issues to them, that kind of testimonial may just be the trigger to think, yeah, okay, I might give that a go. So we're also trying to, I really hope my next clip works. I might be able to do it on YouTube if we can't get it running. We might be able to do that a bit later on. But anyway, increasing consumer engagement. So we always try and, if we're working with new populations, have focus groups around what are the issues for families in that community. How would practitioners be able to work with the community? So we're really building relationships to enable the program to have the most success, and using that consumer information to help us design what would be the best fit. Then, yeah, really trying to just to link to outcomes that families are really looking for. Now, this next clip it runs is actually one of our PhD students who is from Brazil, and she has done some early work with focus groups with Brazilian families in Australia. She's about to run a study over there, and it has some lovely testimonials. So if I can get it going, I will. Lauren, tell me if it doesn't work, and I can just give you the YouTube link, which we can throw up later on. But it just gives you a picture of, she's actually recruiting for families for a group program, but it has some testimonials from the parents who've been to one of her groups already. So we'll give it a go.
deixar para o final, senão vai atrasar muito.
That one didn't work. I'll just keep going without the video, but what I will do is give you the YouTube link so you can have a look at that one. So other ways of engaging families and making sure we're really getting the best reach possible is just to target normative developmental transitions. So if children are, say, about to start preschool, and it becomes the routine that everybody starting preschool does a parenting group, it's just accepted, and so there's far more chance that everyone will come along. But hitting those transition points is also when parents are looking for some support and to develop new routines. And so it's a crucial time to help establish the connection with the support network, but also a good chance to really build in some skill development in a friendly way rather than targeting families saying, you don't seem to be coping too well, you need help. It's just everybody gets this support. So I will skip the next clip, which is just talking about having programs available through community settings, so at school and daycare. Probably might work. And then really making parenting a public health priority. It's really that idea that this is for everybody, and it's not just for people who are flagged as not coping or well. Getting this online. Oh, okay, I'll keep going, I think. So again, another clip which I will pull, and just to talk to you about really the process in targeting population level change. So where there's a clear need, we know there's a specific issue that's rife in the community. If we can build and draw from a clear theoretical framework to develop a program and then build that evidence base that we spoke about, involve consumers to help us shape what the program looks like, what might be in it, what might be its target, how might it be delivered, and then we're really trying to look at how we can best implement that sort of intervention in a cost-effective way in diverse multidisciplinary access points, going for that triangle or the pyramid of using intensive programs sparingly and using some of that money to create broader access for lighter early intervention. Also really enhancing social structures to support parenting, the whole idea of sustainable systems of dissemination, and then really looking at what data are we needing to access to really look at the impact of that population rollout of a program. And that can really inform policy as to how we can prevent issues, who programs work for and who they don't. But that it is possible to shift prevalence of a population level issue. So we've learned about how to build parents' capacities to raise well-adjusted children. We need to activate community-wide processes to support positive parenting. Having that population-based approach means that we're creating the greatest reach rather than waiting for tertiary end need for services. We're trying to prevent that, still being able to service that, but trying to put more effort into prevention. And we know that population level change in parenting is achievable and it will transform lives. I'll just pop up my contact details if you're looking for any more information about CCC research. That first site is our university site. We have a research network that you're welcome to join. People from all around the world who work in the family and child area. We also have a conference coming up next February as a bit of a plug Sonoma in California. So that's, again, an international conference bringing people together from all around the world who are working with programs like Triple P, just to share their experiences and updates on the latest research. And that's also the Triple P website. And I'm done.
Se vocês quiserem fazer alguma questão específica, a gente pode mandar para o WhatsApp para ela responder. Ou a gente então continua e deixa para o final. Só estou preocupada porque para ela já é meia-noite, e eu acho que a gente podia liberá-la quase. Partir para... Tá, não, a gente pega e passa por e-mail para vocês. Tá? Então, acho que para aproveitar agora e a gente aterrissar no Brasil, a gente pode convidar então para dar continuidade a Juliana. Seguindo a programação, vai trazer contribuições pela experiência da implementação do Bolsa Família. Depois a Luana. Muito interessante, achei muito pertinente para o nosso contexto. Falando dela.